A group of crew members are out on a routine salvage mission, hoping to retrieve some scrap metal to sell for a bit of extra cash. As they lower their equipment into the murky depths of the water, they feel a heavy tug on the line and begin to hoist it up, expecting to see nothing more than a rusted old piece of metal. But as the object emerges from the water, their jaws drop in astonishment. It's not just any piece of scrap metal they've lifted. It's something much more valuable and historic than they could have ever imagined. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The winch groaned, cable straining in the gray morning light. Water slapped against the hull, cold and restless. 4 men stood on the deck of the Marlin, eyes fixed on the line as it shivered and jerked, something heavy rising from the river's muddy throat. No one spoke. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and wet iron. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Tommy, the youngest of the crew, felt his heart thumping against his ribs. He'd been on salvage runs before old engines, twisted beams, sometimes a car, once a safe with nothing inside but a drowned rat. But this was different. He could feel it in his bones. "Easy now," muttered Big Dan, the captain. His hands were steady on the winch controls, but his jaw was tight. "Don't want to snap the line." The cable creaked. Then something broke the surface with a sucking gasp. Water poured off the shape, dark and gleaming, as if the river itself was reluctant to let it go. For a moment, no one moved. The thing hung there, swinging gently, dripping black water onto the deck. It was long, wrapped in a tangle of weeds and silt, but even through the grime they could see the shape narrow, deadly, unmistakable. Tommy's mouth went dry. He stared, trying to make sense of it. Not a modern blade, not something from a hardware store or a collector's shelf. This was old. Ancient, maybe. The hilt was thick, wrapped in what looked like leather, rotted and black. Along the blade, under the muck, he thought he saw liney symbols, maybe. Or letters. Big Dan swore softly. What in God's name? They laid the sword out on the deck, careful as surgeons. It was heavier than it looked, the metal dense and cold even through their gloves. Tommy knelt beside it, brushing away mud with trembling fingers. He found himself holding his breath. The engravings were clearer, now spirals and knots, a pattern that seemed to twist and move as the light shifted. He tried to imagine the hands that had made this, centuries ago, the battles it had seen, the blood it had shed. A shiver ran down his spine. "Should we call someone?" asked Riley, the oldest of the crew. He sounded uneasy, like he was afraid to touch it. Big Dan nodded, jaw set. "Yeah, we're not messing around with this. This is history." He pulled out his phone, fingers clumsy. Tommy watched him dial, listened to the low murmur of his voice. He felt a strange mix of fear and excitement, a sense that the world had just tilted under his feet. They'd come out here for scrap. Now they'd found something that didn't belong in this century at all. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Carter. She was small, sharp-eyed, with hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and a voice that brooked no nonsense. She wore jeans and boots, a battered satchel slung over one shoulder. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She knelt beside the sword, pulling on latex gloves, and began to examine it with quick, practiced movements. The crew watched in silence. Dr. Carter ran a soft brush over the blade, revealing more of the engravings. She made small, thoughtful noises, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Where did you find this?" she asked, not looking up. Big Dan pointed out toward the river, about 30 yards off the old bridge, down in the silt. She nodded, still studying the sword. "It's remarkable. The preservation is extraordinary." Tommy couldn't hold back any longer. "How old is it?" Dr. Carter glanced at him, eyes bright. "Hard to say without proper testing, but from the style of these engravings, the shape of the hilt, I'd guess late medieval, maybe even earlier." Riley whistled. "You mean like knights and castles?" She smiled, just a little. "Something like that. This isn't just a weapon. It's a piece of history. Maybe even belonged to someone important." Tommy felt a surge of pride mixed with awe. He tried to picture the man who'd wielded this sword. A king? A warlord? Or just a soldier? Lost to time? Could it be worth something? Asked Pete, the last of the crew. Always practical. Dr. Carter's smile faded. "It's priceless. But more than that, it could tell us things we never knew about this area. Who lived here? Who fought here? This could change everything." The words hung in the air, heavy as the sword itself. By evening, The riverbank was crawling with people reporters, local officials, a few curious neighbors. The crew stood off to the side, watching as Doc Carter and her team carefully lifted the sword into a padded case. Tommy felt a strange ache in his chest. He was proud, yes, but also sad, as if he was saying goodbye to something he'd only just found. He remembered the feel of the sword in his hands, the weight of it, the sense that he was touching the past, reaching across centuries to someone who'd once stood where he stood now. Big Dan clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good, kid." Tommy nodded, not trusting himself to speak. There were interviews, photographs, endless questions. The crew became minor celebrities, their faces splashed across newspapers and TV screens. But for Tommy, the real thrill was in the quiet moments. Sitting by the river at dawn, watching the mist curl over the water, he thought about the sword, about the man who'd lost it. All those years ago, he wondered what stories it could tell. If only he could listen. The sword was there, cleaned and restored, gleaming under the lights. The engravings were clear now symbols and letters, some familiar, some strange. She showed them the research her team had done. The sword, she said, was likely from the 12th century. The style matched weapons used by a local chieftain, a leader whose name had been lost to history. But the engravings told a different story. They spoke of battles, of alliances and betrayals, of a world that had vanished beneath the river's surface. Tommy listened, spellbound. He felt the weight of history pressing down, the sense that he was part of something bigger than himself. When the tour was over, Dr. Carter pulled him aside. "You have a good eye," she said. "Most people would have missed the engravings. You saw them right away." Tommy blushed. "Just got lucky, I guess." She shook her head. "No, sometimes it takes someone who's willing to look a little closer to see what others don't." He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. But that day, it had offered up a piece of the pasta reminder that history is never really gone, just waiting to be found. The crew went back to their salvage runs, but things felt different now. Every time they lowered the winch, every time the cable shivered and groaned, they wondered what else might be waiting in the depths. Tommy kept a photograph of the sword in his wallet. Sometimes, late at night, he'd take it out and trace the lines of the engravings with his thumb. He knew he'd never forget that day. The cold water, the weight of the sword in his hands, the sense that, for one brief moment, he'd touched something eternal. It drew people from all over, historians, students, tourists. It changed the way people saw the river, the town, even themselves. Tommy watched them come and go, listened to their questions and their wonder. He felt proud, yes, but also humbled. The past was never as far away as he'd thought, and sometimes, if you were lucky, it reached out and found you. The river flowed on, silent and deep, carrying its secrets beneath the surface. But for those who knew where to look, there was always the chance of finding something extraordinary, something that could change everything. And that was enough.